Oh, I forgot I had the DLC thing. Hello, everybody. Good afternoon, or good evening, I guess, because it's like 3 p.m. Hello, everybody. I'm just moving my mic real quick. There we go. We are playing more Dave the Diver. I am very excited to get back into this. I took like a day break just so I could, you know, rest my lovely voice. But I have been having a lot of fun with this game. I'm very excited to see what the DLC is like. Not this one. But the jungle one, the In the Jungle DLC, I'm very excited to see what that's like. But we're probably not going to get to anywhere near where that DLC takes place for a while. So let's keep going. I don't really have anything else to say other than hello, everybody. Thank you so much to Kyra Chimera and B Matari for the follows yesterday off stream. I appreciate you guys so much. I'm talking way too much and exhausting my voice already. So let's just get into this because I have been thinking about this game like all the time. It's so fun. It's a blast. Apparently they just added Dave into Fortnite as a skin. So that's some really interesting timing. I did not know that was happening. Oh, I got some rewards because I got the DLC bundle. Because I was playing this game via Steam family sharing before now. So I decided to just cave in and just get my own copy so I could get the DLC and such when that comes out. So yeah. Also, I'm just looking at my mouse pad and it's like so I really need a new mouse pad. This one is like torn up and just has like a bunch of stains on it. Anyways, what were we to do? Alright, this guy wanted moray curry, which I fucked up, and I wasn't able to do it. So, and I think that's it, though. I don't think there's anything else other than just going into the ocean. I'm actually gonna go get a water real quick, because I don't have one with me. So, 1 second, everybody. 1 sec. I'm gonna go get a water. 1 sec. Okay, I'm back. I should have gotten a bottle of water, like, when I started stream today, but I didn't for some reason. I had a Sprite and I thought that would be enough, but it's from, like, last night, so I don't know if I want to drink that. But I hope everyone's having a good day. I've been having an alright day. I mean, I woke up at, like, hold on, let me do something real quick. I woke up at around, gosh, at like 12, sorry, I don't know why that took me so long to think. And then I ordered pizza, and that's kind of all I've been doing today. Yeah, all I've been doing today is just waiting, to stream. But I want it, when I set a time for myself, I want to honor it, so. We are live now. Anyway, so I have a bunch of new upgrades. I have a bunch of different upgrades. And as Dave, let's see what happens, I guess. I should really invest into the net gun. I really should. Oh, is my dolphin friend back? Whoa! A big whale! Whoa, it's a humpback whale. So big that it makes the blue hole look smaller. Look at that! Look at that guy! Oh my gosh, can I like follow him and take a photo? I want to follow you. Hold on, I have this thing here. Oh, it's like a quick dash. That's cool. Oh, where's he going? Let me follow you. Where are you going, Mr. Whale? No, where did he go? Oh, I'm sad. I'm sad. He's gone. Oh. I wanted to see Mr. Whale. Anyways, I think now we can venture further into the depths because I have proper upgrades for it, so I'm excited to do that. It's just there's not actually, last time I checked there wasn't much to see there. I mean, I could be wrong. I could be wrong. But let's go check and see if there's anything interesting, anything of interest to find there. I also need to upgrade my harpoon as well later on because there's no reason I should be I should have to spam space for these smaller fish down here. I'm gonna get some. I know I shouldn't be like using. I shouldn't be holding shift all the time to move. I can, because like that wastes a lot of my energy. But I can't. I'm just so used to doing that in other games, like a force of habit. But yeah, I messed up last time and I did not do the moray curry, so I might have to get another moray eel, but I'm not sure. We'll see. We'll see. We'll see. Because I don't have the recipe on hand right now. Cat food? Did I give it to Momo? I can feed the cat? Oh my goodness! Someone did tell me about this yesterday in chat. I'm so excited. I'm so excited. I am so excited I can feed the cat. Yes. I always love when games let you either feed or pet cats. It's like the best thing. Like, yes, thank you. Or dogs as well, obviously. Either is a plus. There you go. Either is a plus. Both are great. All right. Okay, I cannot get that guy. What about you? I've only gotten like a few depth fish before. Yeah, see, these guys are like hard to get. How many hits does this one take? Jesus. Oh, that was a puffer? Oh, okay, sure. Yeah, they usually take like a lot of harpoon hits, blasts before they. The UV flashlight, take that. Let's take the orange starfish, and then these are football. These football fish also are really annoying. One killed me, so I have to be like really careful. Or sorry, fangtooth. They're not football fish, I guess, but they're still very annoying. So, whoa! Look at this guy. Look at this guy's cool fins. Oh, that's sick. I like that. There's nowhere to run, little buddy. I don't have the net right now on me, so I can't really do that, but I wish I had like a sleep dart or something, but I don't. A Pacific fanfish. Ooh. Oh. Ow! I'm assuming I can't like get this guy. I hate those guys. They're so annoying. I will take the pickaxe though. Alright. I absolutely... Also, I'm gonna check to see... I don't know if the audio... I hope the audio on the game is fine. If it's too quiet or too loud, just let me know. As always, but... Oh. I did not give them enough time to hide. Alright, is there anything down here? I don't recall. I mean, there might be some stuff I missed. Give me that, thank you. But this game has like a really great soundtrack, so I applaud. What is this? A sea snake whip. Okay. Oh, this is where the sea people were. Right. They're gone now. Interesting. Okay, yeah, that's what this was. The sea people were here. I got a sea snake whip. Because why not? Alright. So that's what was down there. Now I remember. It's been a hot minute. I have like the memory of a something that has a terrible memory. I don't know. I don't have good memory. I don't have very good memory. So I went that way last time. Is there anything? Oh, it's one of these. Ow! Asshole! Jesus. I hate you. I hate you so bad. Okay, don't need that. Okay, is there anything this way? Oh, that's not what I wanted to do. Oh. Wait your turn, Clove. Wait your turn. No, disappear. Come on! Oh my god, I accidentally let go of the button. Either that or just it stopped. Or like I ran out of flashlight. Which is a possibility, because I'm a little stupid sometimes. Oh, is that oh, that's not a moray, that's a oh, whatever. That's a moray. I want to not fuck with that guy right now. It takes a while to kill him, so I'm good. Ooh, like that. Whoa, what is this? Please don't look at me. Please don't look at me, sir. Thank you. I wonder how deep you can go in this game. Like, I wonder how deep it goes. I don't know if it's like so deep, if it's like that deep, but I don't know. Okay, there's a lot of pickaxes dropping for some reason. It's one of those guys. Okay, he can't get me if I'm doing this. A shovel. Okay, I don't need that. Alright, this is where the opal is. I don't really need opal though. I'll take that. Oh, there's something up here. Unless this is like a circle. I'm just going back to where I was, but is that an opa? Looks like a sunfish. This is the first time I've seen one in person. Be able to take a picture as a souvenir? Yay! Oh my god, look at that boy. Look at that big boy. Oh. Fuck. Start. Oh man, I messed that up. Come on. Where are you? Oh, hold on. Ah! Dang it. Dang it. Dang it. I was so close. I was so close on that one. I just need to focus a little more. I think I just need to hold it and then it like focus and then it'll focus and then I let go. I want to get a photo of both of them. Because I want to see what happens if I get the optional goal. Whatever, it doesn't matter. That is the shittiest photo ever. That is the shittiest photo I've ever taken in this game. I need like an oxygen tank or something. Look at that guy. I don't think I want to mess with that guy. Yeah. Actually, hold on. Eat grenades, sucker! Oh god! Oh god! Oh god! Oh god! Whoa, my god, that guy does a lot of damage. Okay, this was a mistake. This was a... Oh my god, there's a fucking crab down there! Oh my god, this was a mistake. Hold on. Come here. Thank you. Okay, okay. We're good. We're good, we're good, we're good. We're good. I'll take your flesh now. Mega... Oh. Can I... How do I get this guy? I can't really do anything. I'm just gonna leave you alone. I'm assuming maybe I can't. I just can't do it right now, but... I don't know. Interesting. I don't need that. There's another one right there. How do I... Okay, I clearly cannot do anything about that right now, so... There's a thing here. I can't go there either. Oh. Oh, it's these fucking things again. Oh, whoa, 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 whoa. You're so fast! Oh, they blow up. Oh, they fucking explode? Oh! That's great to know. Look at this guy. Oh. Oh, you're a foe. You're a foe. Okay, I was, oh god! Oh god, I think it's like passive, where I think if I hadn't engaged, if I hadn't fucking grenaded it, then it would have not. Rhino, okay, hold on. What is that? Rhino Chimeridae. I know words good. At least I think I pronounced it okay. How deep can you go in this? Jesus. What's that? Sesame seed. Another one of those fucking crabs. They're like blocking my path. I can't do anything about that. I don't want that. The rubber chicken is funny and all, but I think I'm good. Another one of those jellies. I just gotta run. Yeah! Oh no! Oh, okay. It exploded before anything bad could happen. Okay, now I'm at critical depth. Okay. If I just hover over 229. If I just hover at this depth. If I go too far. Oh my god, how far does this get? How far can you go? How far can you go? Jesus. Jesus. I want that fish. I want that fish. I want that fish. Nope. I missed. Oh my god, this guy's fast. Come on. Yeah, keep missing your shot. Keep missing your shot. Keep missing. Whoa, whoa, what? That's different. Interesting. So that's, I'm assuming that's specific to the shock harpoon. More of these guys. I don't want to deal with these guys. Oh, do these ones explode as well? Or are they just like... Hold on. Q! The fish QTEs are very funny, I will say. Oh, I'm out of... I have no space. Okay, I think we can head back up now. I think we can head back up. I saw like a thing. Hold on. Not this, but I will get some more oxygen. I saw an escape pod over here somewhere. Yeah, right here. Let's go. Oh, that was a successful dive, I'd say. That was a successful dive. I did not die this time. I did not die this time, so I count it as successful. I got some really cool. Oh, hello. Oh, you brought a picture of something. Can I see? An Opa. Did you know that the Opa is warm-blooded? Oh, I think I've heard that before. It's amazing that some fish species are warm-blooded. The ocean is full of mysteries. I'll put your picture to good use. I'm sure the readers will love it. Yay, money! There are photo spots all over the place. Thank you for your help and keep up the good work. Alright, I need to check. Oh, I got some applicants. Cool. I need to check. Is there like a place I can see my recipes and stuff? Ah, here, I think. Alright, let's see here. Which one is the moray curry I think he wants? So where would that be? Moray curry. I don't see it. Huh. Oh, nocturnal. Interesting. Interesting. Okay, cool. Let's go to the sushi place real quick to see if I do even have moray curry as like if I have the stuff for it. Because I messed up last time and accidentally did moray sushi, so. But let's add staff here. Oh, hold on. Let's see who we got. We got Liu, Rawl, and Pai. Ooh, Rawl seems pretty good, so I'll select you. Pai, are you? Oh, I don't have enough money. Okay, well, Pai. Yeah, okay. And I guess I can go for Leo as well. Okay. You have better serving, and well, sorry. Hold on. I need to do that the opposite way. You are the cooking, you can cook, and you can serve. There we go. Okay, and then, okay, let's see here. The moray curry. Okay, what do I need to make that? Where is it? Do I not have any? I don't think I have any. I have moray. Hold on. I have moray. I have 3 moray. But where? How do I make moray curry? Where is moray curry? Do I need to like research it? I do need to research it. That's why it wasn't on the menu. That's why it wasn't on the menu. Okay. Alright, I see. Man, these take a lot of artisan flames. I'll research this one. Let's see if I can add it to the menu now. I can! Okay. Cool. Moray eel curry, and then see what gives. I don't know if I want to use that for that yet. Let's do like 3 of these. Let's do 1 of these. 1 of these. 2 of these. And 2 of these. Well, no. Let's do like 3 of these. No, damn it. Okay. Add ingredients, then I'll just do 3 of these. Okay. And then I can enhance it as well. Oh, that's a new, it got a new enhancement. Is this a new enhancement one? I think so. Whoa. Sick. Oh! Well, that was great. Okay. I have some new stuff for the interior, apparently. Ooh. Pufferfish cooking license. That's funny. I'm very partial to the picture in this one. All right, let's open. Let's open. Oh, it's this guy. All right. Yeah, I should be able to serve this to you now. Here you go. Let's see what he thinks. Oh. Oh my god! Oh my god, he's a baby! Oh my god, he's a baby. No, he's a baby. Okay, no, he's not a baby. That's the taste I remember. Oh, I forgot. Oh, I gotta do the voice. Oh, I'm glad you like it. The food brings back memories. One time, a young man who lived with a sick mother in my village was bitten by a moray eel, keeping them from going into the sea any longer. I was 12 then, and I went out to the pitch-black darkness and plunged a harpoon into that moray eel's gills. I brought them the dead moray eel, and the mother made me moray curry in thanks. Thinking of that woman's kind eyes brings tears to my eyes. In any case, thanks for the food. That was some fantastic cooking. You're welcome. Alright, I said I'd tell you something nice, right? Nearly forgot amid all that nostalgia. Come see me in the empty lot behind this building. Oh my god, I forgot about the other people's tea! Oh, I'm stupid! Oh, they're mad. Oh, I'm so sorry. You want this, okay. Oh god, there's so many fucking people. Why did I have to get the person who's at the farthest at the bar? Oh my god, no, the beer! Oh, I'm sorry. 20% froth? Like that? Hold on. Okay. I'm apparently not very good at this. Oh boy. Oh, that guy didn't get his beer, so he got pissed. Oh man, okay. Like, no, I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to do that. Too good. Oh, great, the wasabi, what's this? You won't be able to produce food if you run out of wasabi. Oh gosh, oh, just spam W, okay. Oh. I messed up a lot there. Yeah, I could have done better. Oops. Thanks to his help, we can now translate your words into the sea people's language as well. Wow! I'm curious to know what they have to say as well. I'll first make my way back to the sea people's location. Woo! Yay! We are making progress! I am excited to see the sea people. I hope they're doing okay. Huh? What is it? I spent some quality time with Leis-chan and did some quiet thinking. I realized that the pink people back for help received was what a noble master would do. Tell me, Dave, are you satisfied with your guns? They're fine. It'd be nice if they were stronger, though. I guess it's time I stepped into the spotlight, so to speak. I'll help you enhance your guns. Enhance them? How do you do that? It's about making them stronger, or imbuing elements like poison or electricity. There's one thing you need to remember, though. Only guns that have been created can be enhanced. I speak at the risk of sounding obvious. Oh, I see. Gun enhancement. That sounds pretty useful. Duff, you're a cooler person than I thought. What are you saying? I'm just trying to be the best master I can for Leis-chan. I think I provided an adequate explanation. It's back to the world of the pixies for me. Goodbye, Trinity! Cool. Oh, Otto. Did you sleep well? Back to back, so we got some fucking silly voices. Yesterday I told you I'd tell you something good. Take the boat and come behind the restaurant. Okay. Oh god. They're blowing up my phone! Stop blowing up, I can't even check my phone! Oh wait, why can't I check my phone? Is it because of this? Whoa! Fish farm? Wow, what is this place? Looks like you're doing quite a lot of hard work catching fish every day. So I got to making a fish farm and I finished it in a single day yesterday. How did you do that? I don't think this is very stable if you finish it in a single day. I'm gonna be honest, I'm pretty sure it's gonna like all fall down. What? A single day? In any case, this is where you can grow fish and also let them multiply. I'll explain slowly, so listen closely. Is this game worth the hype? I would say so. I would definitely say it's very fun. First, come over the first section, and like new stuff keeps unlocking. Like, I don't know how far I'm into the game. Maybe like 6 hours, I'd say. But I'm still getting bombarded with like new content. First, come over to the section here. Fish farms need to have the right environments for their fish. Each section has fish from a different depth. Infinite minigames, yeah, exactly. This is where you can grow fish that live at depths of 0 to 50 meters. Each section has limited space, and once the density reaches 100%, no more fish can fit. Of course, you can pay a bit of money to expand them. Each section is equipped with its own camera so you can look inside. Now come along. Ooh, camera. Oh my god, it's like a little aquarium. That's so cute. Nice, isn't it? I added a few fish to start you off. Wow, it's like an aquarium. That's what I said. Oh my god, Dave, we're on the same wavelength. Just staring into the water is enough to make you all peaceful inside. But that isn't the purpose of this fish farmer course. I'll teach you how to pluck them out so they can be eaten. Pay attention. Okay. Fish in the fish farm can be sent to Banjo Sushi or to be used as ingredients or sold directly. Even if you fail to catch fish because you are so busy exploring, you won't need to worry. But how do we add fish to the farm? Simply catching them will kill them. Good question. You can farm them by collecting fish eggs. If you capture some fish alive, you'll sometimes get fish eggs. Those eggs will automatically be sent here. If you have 2 or more of the same type, they can multiply. Wow, I see. I placed 2 fish eggs, so you should be able to see the results tomorrow. Alright, coming back tomorrow. Alright. Do I have any fish eggs anywhere? Okay, I do not have anything. Okay. How deep can you fucking go in this game? I'm sorry, look at all these tanks. And this is 130 meters. How deep can you go in this game? Alright, let's get out of here. Let's skedaddle. How do I get out of here? How do I leave? How do I leave? Oh, this is the boat. Okay. Jesus Christ, how deep can you go in this? Alright, let's see here. People have been blowing on my phone. Momo will never sit still. That's so cute. I have to feed Momo. I have to feed Momo. Hold on, hold on. Oh my god, I almost forgot. I have to go feed the cat. I can only feed the cat a day, I think. Oh, that's so cute. There's like art for the... Alright, let's feed Momo. Oh, and I can talk to the... I can talk to my employees. That's cool. Oh. Here you go. Yay! Oh, so cute. Let's see what I can research. Let's research this. Alright, cool. I wonder what that does. I wonder what feeding the cat does. I wonder if maybe I'll get some special things from the cat. Perhaps. Alright. I don't think I can upgrade. Oh, I can upgrade my... I can upgrade my diving suit. Okay, let's do that. How far... Jesus, 540 meters. How far can you go? How far can you go in this game? Jesus, what do you have in your shop? Also, I think I have some stuff that I can sell. Yeah. Use to enhance weapons. A poison sack can be used for weapon enhancement. Use to enhance weapons. Okay, I don't really have anything else I can sell. What do you have to buy though? I'll get one of these. I don't really need it because they're like, you can find them like anywhere, but I'll grab it. Oh shit, I forgot to enhance my weapons. God damn it. Aw, man. It's okay. It's okay. I also still don't know how to pick up these, gosh, these guys. Sea urchins here. And I can't, like, do anything about it. Let's go. Let's go back to the sea people now. I'll take the katana. I can't, yeah, okay. I will take that. You can now disassemble guns, harpoon tips, and other weapons. Ooh. Ooh. Ooh, I'll take that though. I'm gonna take the hush dart. But yeah, this game is definitely a blast, so I'd say it's worth it. I have been having a lot of fun. There's a lot to do, there's a lot to explore. I like exploration games. If you're a huge fan of exploration games, then I definitely recommend it, because it's a lot of fun. Oh no, I'll just assemble, I don't need that. Okay. So that just gives you fragments, I see. Yeah, huge vouch for it. And the timing is great because apparently Dave just got added into Fortnite, so. Oh, okay, okay, that doesn't kill. That does not, I thought that would, I'm sorry. Okay. Oh, wait, no, it does. Okay. I mean, it doesn't kill, sorry, it stuns, whatever. It just takes some time for some fish to fully get, you know, knocked out. Which makes sense. I'm not gonna try it on you, though. Whoa! Haha, no thanks. Leave me alone. Leave me alone. Leave me alone! Oh my god! Fuck. Whoa! Okay, you see that? You see that? Oh my! No, no, no! This is a dead end! This is a dead end! Ah! Why did I come here? This was a mistake! This was a mistake! Let me- ah! Oh my god! I'm gonna die! I'm actually gonna fucking die. Leave me the fuck alone, bro! Holy shit! I need to use this. I went the wrong way. That was not the right way. That was not the right way. That was clearly the very wrong way. Okay, I'll take that. Thank you. God. Usually, I start like actually literally sweating when stuff like that happens, because like I don't want Dave to get knocked out, especially because when I haven't done anything yet. So, all right, let's go find a flashlight and then get back to the. I gotta be careful with that guy. And get back to the fish people. Was it this way? I think it was this way. Sorry, the sea people, not the fish people. I'm pretty sure they were this way, but I could be wrong. It could be another way. No, okay, I don't think it was this way. I think it was a different way. I get so lost. Oh, I'm stupid, there's a thing on the screen. There is a thing directly right there, there's a radar. I completely forgot about it. I hope everyone's been having a good day, though. My day has been going alright. Well, I mean, like I said earlier already that I didn't really do much today yet. I just kind of ordered a pizza. And I was just waiting to stream. That's kind of mostly what I've been doing. Alright, see, it takes a bit of time for them to knock out, so you just have to kind of give it time. There we go. Alright, this way. No? No, not this way. Not this way. Down there. God, it's so easy for me to get lost in this game. It's really easy. I'm stupid. I'm kind of stupid. I apologize. I got no brain. Thoughts empty, etc., etc. No thoughts, head empty. Yeah, that's the proper thing people say. Ooh, I'll take, nah, okay. I'll leave that there for now. Hello, my friends! Let's try out the Sea People translator from Dr. Bacon and see how it works. Can you hear me? What? How is a human speaking our language? An interesting creature. What? I missed that. His body looks different from the ones we usually see. Well, in any case, right, I should introduce myself. My name is Suam. Among us low dwellers. Oh, you said you call us sea people, right? You can say I'm the bravest and coolest male among them. Swam, nice to meet you. I'm Dave. Dave, in our language, your name sounds very similar to broken toilet lid. What is with this creature? In any case, the person lying here is the daughter of the Sea People village chief, Ramo. Ever since being kidnapped by that stupid giant squid, she's been unconscious. If I'd known about it a little earlier, I'd have shown that squid a thing or two. Don't get a big head for defeating an insignificant squid, human. I am the one that guards Ramo. You really are a noisy one. In any case, you seem to have something to say. What is it? Oh, about that. In order to allow Ramo to recover, We need some medicinal herbs. I'm unable to leave as I must stay and look after her. This guy is a fucking coward. We already know this. Human, you must acquire some medicinal herbs to help Rama recover. The feather coral and lily coral grow in these parts, and please make them edible and bring them to me. Make them edible? How do I do that? That's for you to figure out, human. Go find a chef to help you or something. She's ill, so I can't refuse to help her. Feather coral and lily coral, huh? Guess I'll take a look around first. Alright. I'm not sure where I would be able to find those, but I'll look. I will look. I wish I had like a map or something of like the whole area, like of where I've been and where I haven't, just so I could see. Cause is there a map? And have I been stupid this entire time? Hold on. No, there's no map. I don't see a map or any. Oh, there's a thing here. I'm assuming if I press that, then I'm gonna lose shit. Okay, so I don't think it's that way. Okay, no, it might be that way. No? Oh, I think I can go this way as well. I need like a map though, because I get lost so often in this game. It's not even funny. Alright, this is where the okay, I think I came this way last time, and this is where that guy is, so I just need to go down this way, I think. Ignore that guy. Please don't come over here, I swear to God. I will find something to do about it. Or whatever. I will figure out something how to deal with it. Yes, I can speak words. Oh, okay. All right, they're just scattered about in the. Oh, this thing has pretty far range. Oh, yeah, that works. Just fall asleep. Go to sleep. Go to sleep. Go to sleep. Go to sleep. I can also just beat it over the head a little. Yeah, because these things, like, die very fast. Alright, what's this? Oh, it's just a rock. Okay, I don't... Okay, so this is not the way. I think I just need to go deeper if I want to go back where I was. Okay. Yeep. No, this is where the opal is. Okay, I think I need to go, like, up a little, and then... God, I don't remember. My memory is like shit. I need to figure out how to get to the depth I was before. I don't know how. Don't know how. Maybe... Oh, okay. But there's something here, so I'll grab that. Oh, maybe if I go like this. Maybe like this. Yes, okay, I think... Okay, I think I can go... No, wait, this is just a fucking going around in circles. I do not want to get too close to these things because they sting you. That's just going around in circles. I need to figure out where I really hope there's like a map or something that unlocks later, because I get hopelessly lost in like these types of games, which is great. Okay, that's where I came from. Okay, maybe I'm not supposed to go this way yet. Or maybe this is not the right way that I was before, because I know I got deeper. Oh, ow! Before needing to get an upgrade. So, oh, I'm gonna take that. And I don't think it was this way, was it? No, maybe. No. Actually, hold on. No, I think that's just where the sea people are. I think that's the way to the sea people. Right, no, I think it's that way, actually. Hold on. I just need to figure out how to get deeper. Ow. Oh god. Alright, that was my bad. Okay, it is this way, it is this way. It is indeed this way. We'll take that. Right, because I remember these stupid ass crabs. That I can't do anything about. I wonder if there's gonna be like a fast travel thing soon, like later on. Can I like stun dart you? No, I can't. God damn it. Okay. Yeah, there's like a thing here as well, which I'm assuming will come into play later. I gotta be careful with these guys because they fucking explode. Yeah. Okay, are you a friend or a foe at first? If I get... Okay, you are a friend at first until I see. So it is like passive. Interesting, so I guess some creatures are passive and they'll only attack you if you attack them. That's cool. Okay. There was an opening there, wasn't there? Yes, this way. I really want to see how deep I can, like, how deep I can go right now. Okay. Run for it, run for it, run for it. Oh boy. Okay, it's okay. Woo! It is a-okay. Everything is fine. Everything is awesome. Hold on, I just need to... Gosh. Hold on. I need to drink some water in a sec. I'm like starting to sweat. I don't want to turn on my fan though, because then it's gonna, you guys are definitely gonna hear it over my mic, so I do not want to do that. Okay, I don't want that. I will take some more oxygen though. A brittle starfish, huh? Alright, so this is where I was last time. We're finally back to where we were. Don't need that right now. And I can go a little deeper than I did before. Oh, wait, no. No, I thought this was... Oh, it's like a blockade. Okay, so I can't even go there yet. Okay, I thought... Okay, so there's like something blocking that way. It really looked like I could go. It really looked like I could go down there, but I don't think I can. Maybe there's some stuff over here, though. Fuck off. Go to sleep, go to sleep, go to sleep. Go to sleep. Oh, I missed. Go to sleep. 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 Why the fuck did that not work? Okay, now it's asleep. Ooh. Ow! What the fuck? That hurts. That hurted. Alright, I don't want to, like, pick you up or anything, so I'm just gonna leave you. Leave you to your own devices. Did I go this way before? Oh my god. Yeah, this is the way I came from. God damn it. Okay. Alright. I think I've seen all there is to see right now because I can't really go any further down. Dang. Because I'm assuming this is somewhere that opens up later. I'm assuming that this suspicious looking rock pile opens up later. I mean, it could be wrong. Because it really just looks like you can go down here, doesn't it? So I'm assuming that is something that will happen eventually. But I want to see if there's anything else down here that I can take a look at, but I don't think so. So might as well just head back. Go to sleep. Alright, yeah. We are at capacity here. Escape pod, thank you. Ugh. I'm putting poor Dave through the ringer here. This poor fucking guy. God, I'm getting followed by so many bots on Twitter. Like I don't even know what to do about it anymore. I don't even bother with removing them all because there's so many of them and they just keep popping up. It's really fucking, it's really annoying though. God damn it. Sorry. I'm sorry. I don't know why I got so heated there. Anyways. Whew. It seems I got everything that Fuzzy Halffish asked me for. Why are you so mean, Dave? I'm kidding. He wanted me to make this coral edible, right? I'll have to ask Boncho for help. Alright. I will, okay. So we got some, sorry, I'm like moving stuff from my desk. Ooh. Okay, cool. I got some eggs and stuff. I assume that was only if you catch them alive, though. Huh. Cool. Oh boy. Okay. My switch cable is I'm gonna fix this on my floor here because my switch cable was almost ran over by my chair. I don't want to do that. I do not want that to be a thing that happens. I don't want to damage my charger. Happened way too many times. All right. Oh, I can craft the small net gun now. Let's craft that. Okay, cool. Yeah, sure, I'll equip it. How do I like upgrade these though? Oh, okay. That's how you do that. Okay. Ooh. Put this. Okay, what about... Oh, so I can upgrade the underwater... Oh, I can upgrade into the lightning rifle. Ooh, I'll do that. I don't have any fragments though. Do I want to craft... Do I want to do that or the triple axle? Just... Yeah. Whatever. This fucking guy. Oh my god. This fucking guy. No, I don't want to equip it right now. He's got a Manbrook Pro. God. God, this guy. Alright. I need to... Well, I'm gonna go dive one more time, and then I'm gonna ask Boncho to cook. Oh wait, actually no, hold on. Maybe I can go... maybe I can just go now and ask. What's up? So this... Oh. No. No. Did I turn off... Okay. I turned off my monitor for a sec there. I got really scared. Because I pressed a button on my keyboard. God damn, I thought I turned off my computer. Well, I think we can start with the porridge of sorts. Give me a moment. God, he's always aura farming. Everyone... Thank you, Boncho. Here you go. I softened the coral to make it easy to eat, so it should be fine. Wow, thank you, Boncho. You're so quick. Alright, let's take this to Ramo. Oh, I should probably... Let's see if I can hire. Oh, I don't have any money. Right. I want to wait until I have enough money to hire that other guy. And then I can fire some people. Alright, let's go give this to the sea people. Oh, down there. So let's go heal. Let's go... There was a healing. Let's go do that. I don't know. Why is there a jellyfish here? Whoa. Why are there jellyfish here now? Have those always been here? Am I stupid? I might be. Alright. I think I can just go down from here. Oh yeah! Nope. God damn it. Leave me alone, goddamn! Jesus. Oh my god, these guys are fucking, this fucking asshole's relentless, Jesus. Did you see how long he was chasing me for? Like, what did I do to you, huh? Why do you want to kill me so bad like that? I don't know. I'm just a little guy. I'm just a little guy, and I did nothing wrong in my entire life. Ow! Oh my god! I cannot. I need to stop getting hit. Oh great! No, there's two assholes chasing me. That's awesome. I need to stop getting my shit. No! 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 This is the wrong way again. Get me out of here! Get me out of here, please! Please! I don't want to deal with these guys. I don't like them. I don't like them. Scary fish. Alright, that works. A dusky grouper. I should probably get more of this like kelp and stuff because I don't know how much I have left in the sushi restaurant, so let's see. I don't think no, I can't catch this. This is just a background element, I think, more or less, basically. Okay, so they're like down here. Oh, I need the flashlight. The flashlight is usually in one of these little things here. Yeah, here it is. I'm coming to help you. I'm coming to help. Okay, no, this is the right way. I thought for a second I went the wrong way. Here, I brought some coral porridge. Oh, you really brought it? Seems to be right. Ramo, you fucker! This is coral porridge. I prepared it myself. You asshole! I did that. You take the credit for what I did? This guy sucks. I feel much better now. I can't remember anything after seeing squid tentacles. Huh? A human? What is a human doing here? Well, you could say I saved you. I defeated the giant squid and brought you the coral porridge. Is that so? Wait, Ramo, that's not it. I'm actually the one who... Alright then, human. You shall escort me back to my village. Me? Why should I? I'm an injured lady. You need to keep anything dangerous from happening. Ramo, I can escort you. Swam! You go ahead and scout our path. What? How could you let a human escort you? I could keep you safe and... You haven't even passed the village tactics exam. It was tough enough coming here. That's a sore spot for me. Swam, stop complaining and be our lookout for the path ahead. As for you, human, you'll have to carry me on your back. On my back? It's hard enough to move around as it is down here. Oh, my injured fin is hurting again. You are impossible. I'll take you to the village and no further, right? Alright. Oh, I like her. Alright, well, I guess I have to escort her. Oh, I have to, okay. Oh, I have to hold this down? God damn, okay. Hold on. This is gonna be an interesting escort mission. Okay, how am I supposed to get past these? Oh! Okay. Well, that's very helpful. Okay, so she automatically just has like a aura. She automatically just has like an aura. Yes, that's what I want to say. And I can't pick up anything while I'm holding her, so. Good. Follow along. Make sure Ramo isn't hurt. Interesting. Alright, come along. Alright, that makes these things a lot easier. They have like some special fish powers. Some special UV fish powers. Where is he? Oh, he's down there. Okay, he's that. I didn't see the thing. He's over that way. Oh! What is that? What is this vibration? It's rare to experience one so strong. Does something happen to the village? We must return quick! Hurry, human! Okay. Okay. Oh god. Oh. Okay, I remember seeing these signs and stuff. Please don't notice me. Please don't notice me. Please don't notice me. Please don't notice me. Thank you for not noticing me. I appreciate it. Hey now, human. Don't tell me you're tired already. Bring her carefully. I'm not. I'm actually doing perfectly fine. Excuse you. So, I think he's the tired one actually, because he's jealous. Oh wait, what? Okay. So this way? I saw him go this way. So then we must go this way. Oh boy. Okay. Fuck. Oh no 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 no. Oh my god, no! Oh god, I'm sorry! I'm so fucking sorry! Please heal! Oh my god. Oh, I'm sorry. No. Oh, I should have just let them blow up me instead. Okay. Okay, not this way. This way is the wrong way. This way. Oh god, there's another one? Okay, I have to do the... Fuck. I have to do this myself. Okay. Fucking hell. Okay. Can I stop doing that? Can I stop doing that for like 1 second, please? Jesus. Hold on. I have to get some more oxygen real quick. I thought I saw like an O2 tank somewhere around here. Okay, maybe not. Oh, I have one on me. Okay. I'm gonna check if there's another one in here. No. Okay. Oh, I thought that maybe that would heal her a little bit as well, but it doesn't. It just heals me. Okay. Rumbo, this... I knew it! I knew that was a path block. I knew it was gonna be it. I knew it. Our path is blocked with rock. I knew it! Oh no! I saw this already. I was like, I wonder if I can go there. I was right. I'm always right. No. Oh no, what's going on? Must have been the vibrations earlier. No, that was there before. Swam, think of something. I need to get back quick before my father scolds me again. Maybe we can open up a path by dropping the loose rock pile over there? If we can topple it and make it fall, it might just do the trick. Well, I suppose it might work. How do we make the rocks fall, though? I see a stake over there. Maybe if we pull it out? Human, can you pull out that stake over there? The stake? I think I'll hurt my hands with the gloves I'm wearing. I could probably do it with gloves that are thicker. So that's how you get gloves that let you pick up sea anemones and stuff. Dave, my apologies. I left the microphone on because I was dying to know what you're talking about. If it's enhanced diving gloves you need, I think my lab could help you out. Huh? New gloves? Aha! Equipment goes hand in hand with exploration, does it not? Come on up to the boat. I think there must be a way. Could you wait here for a moment? Hold it, human. You plan to leave Ramo in a dangerous place like this? Luckily, she has me guarding her. Still, be back quick. Okay. Well, at least I didn't kill her accidentally. That would have not been good. So I'm gonna get a few fish here and then go back. Yes, miss all your shots that you take. Yes, just do that. Yeah, perfect, perfect. Just keep doing that. Keep doing that. Keep doing that, Clove. Keep doing that. You're doing awesome, sweetie. Fuck! Jesus. Well, there's some rope over there I want to grab. Oh, sorry, that's not a rope, that's a starfish. Okay. Let's go. Let's go. Let's go get some better gloves. So I'm trying to think of what other games I want to stream besides this. I could try streaming some Uma Moose. Oh. Hello. The road back to the Sea People Village, huh? How fascinating! My lab has developed some diving gloves to be used for retrieving artifacts. I see. That should let me pull out a stake without my hands slipping, right? Haha! Of course. It has various safety measures built in that'll let you move many other objects besides stakes. The long dive must have been tiring. Get some rest, I'll explain the details tomorrow. I'll come to the boat tomorrow morning. Alright. Cool, cool. Oh, the fish did a thing. Go check the fish tank. Okay. Alright, oh, I guess we'll check it tomorrow. That's not what I should have pressed. I should have pressed sushi. It's a lot easier to just go to the, from the farm to the sushi place. Is that a baby? Huh? Little kid we haven't opened yet. Oh, that's it's a puppet! That's so cute! Hello? Kid? You look like a student. We haven't opened yet. Come back a bit later. Listen, you I heard you the one time, so stop babbling! What in the world? I'm sorry. It wasn't me. You rotten blowfish, you! Get me food! Food! What in the world is going on here? I think I've read about this somewhere. There's a therapy method that involves letting traumatized kids speak their mind through dolls. Doll? How dare you? You idiots don't deserve to live! I suppose it could be something more complicated. Let's ask what she wants first. Kombu and white trebly ochazuke. I want it! I do! That sounds like something older men would want. I don't know what's going on, but we'll have to give her what she wants for us to try and have a conversation. Kombu and white trebly ochazuke. Let's check the ingredients first. I'm assuming okay, here it is. Hold on, oops. Oh, I have everything to make it. Okay, alright, cool. Now I'm out of flames though, so. Alright, let's add that. So let's add 2 of those. Add 1 of these. Go with 2 of these. Oh, hold on, I can enhance this. Oh, new cutscene. This guy's too cool. Whoa. Okay. Careful, man. Jesus. Please be careful, Bancho. You're gonna slice people's heads off if you keep doing that. That was sick, though. I could enhance it another. I'm not gonna enhance it once more. All right, let's do like 3 of those. I can also enhance this one a bunch as well. Let's do. Actually, I'm gonna enhance it once more. Do 2 of these, and then anything else that can be enhanced. Yes. And then 3 of these. Okay, cool. All right, I think we are ready to open. Here you go. Is she gonna feed it to the puppet? Okay, no. That would be really fucking funny. Aw, so cute. Oh. Huh? Why are you crying suddenly? It's too good! You fuck! This is way too good! Damn it, it's too good! It reminds me of my father. Hold on one sec. I have to be right back for a sec. Alright, I'm back. Just had a little interruption there, but we are good to go. What's going on, kid? My name is Maki. I'm looking for my father. My father left to explore the depths, and I can't get in touch with him anymore. His favorite food was kombu and white trevally ochazuke, and I heard you sell it here. I thought he might have come by here. That's a pity. I'll be sure to tell you if we see someone that looks like your father. And what is that doll? This is a Ceylon. Is it Clone or Ceylon? I never know. Plushie. My father gave it to me before he left. Oh, I have a favor to ask. It's about the Ceylon. I've never seen one in person. Could you catch one for me? Huh? A Ceylon? We can't catch something so small with a harpoon. What do we do? Could we use this? Oh, a bug net? So that's how you catch the smaller things like the seahorse and the other things. I think it might work. Alright, I'll give it a shot. What are you doing, you walrus? Get your tights on and jump in the water! Oh, I'm so sorry. I can't control my emotions that well yet. Very cute. New content! Alright, cool. That's how, yeah, that's how you catch them. Oh god, okay. Nice. You too? I think I should just focus on the T for the most part, because, all I can do right now. Okay. God, I need my customers to be more patient with me. Please be more patient with me. I cannot do that other person's beer. I cannot. I physically can't. I physically can't get to you in time. I'm sorry, sir. Oh god. Oh my god. Oh my god. There's too many people ordering. There's too many people fucking ordering. Whatever. Okay. Please. Please. Please, I can't do this. No proper service. Shut up! I'm trying. I'm fucking trying. I'm trying my best here. You guys are just needy. There's so many people who want beer. How many people want beer? Why do you all want beer? Why? God. Okay, whatever. I'm sorry. Jesus. Nice. Oh. Hello? Dave. The fish in the farm yesterday. Oh, sorry, I forgot the voice I did for him. Dave, the fish in the farm yesterday, they multiplied. Hurry on over to the fish farm. Okay, okay. I've marked the section with the new fish. I've marked the sections with new fish with hearts, so they're easy to recognize. Go and see for yourself. Okay. Wow, the mysteries of nature never cease to amaze me. Oh, interesting. So there's like a fish breeding thing. I'll mark them with faint hearts of fish. Hold on, I got. Speaking of eggs, I'm reminded of my son, who I haven't seen in a long time. You have a son? It was a windy and rainy day. I went too far out on my ship, and the storm flipped my ship over. I haven't been able to go back to see my son since. I didn't know that. Alright. I almost went into the fucking country accent for Dave, I'm sorry. I'll come by often to check. Thanks to you, Otto, I feel much less pressure to catch fish. If you have two or more of the same kind of fish, there's a chance for a baby fish to be born. Cool. Ooh. Right, okay. Where? Okay, never mind. Where's the dusky grouper? I don't see it. I only see the barracuda. Interesting, okay. You gonna give me those gloves? Here, these are special diving gloves made in our research facility. With these, you'll be able to pick up various objects in the water. Why don't you test them out yourself? Enter the water! Okay. I'll do that. Oh, I should be able to pick up the spiky boys now. Objects that can be picked up will show a button when you go near them. First try grabbing the pile of rocks over there and dropping it. Ooh, okay. Oh, interesting. Oh, that's cool. Oh. Well, I have to drop it from here? Oh, wow, very nice. Let's try going down. Oh, that's cool. Oh, there's still more. Oh my god, this game just keeps opening up. Ah! That current's strong. Grab that anchor so it won't sweep you away. Oh my god, oh my god, oh my god. Good. You can grab objects like that to anchor yourself. That'll come in handy in places with strong currents. Okay. Oh, I see something shiny back there. Grab the stake in front of you and pull. Okay. Oh, hold on. Oh boy, this is. Are you fucking minigaming me? Of course you are. Awesome! Since the path is open, grab the treasure up top before coming up. Alright, see you in the boat. Alright. Looks like Dr. Bacon left abruptly again after finishing his explanation. In any case, these diving gloves look like they could come in very handy. I heard that the sea people were waiting for you. Go down there and try. Okay, cool. Alright, I get it, man. I can't upgrade anything here. Can I upgrade any of these? No, I cannot. Oh my god, there's a whole entire. How big is this game? How big is this game? I did not realize I'd be signing myself up for playing this game like a ton on stream. So that's my fault. Hold on, I gotta look this up. How large is Dave the Diver? How long? God damn it. No, I did not mean to. I closed out of everything on Opera, including my chat. Guys! Ah, man, hold on. No, don't crash on me now. No, don't do that. Come on. Be nice to me, please. Oh, god damn it. It fucking crashed. I love my computer. My computer loves me. Okay. Okay, we're back to normal now. Hold on. I like it when I press a button when I'm trying to search something up on Google and everything just closes, which is great. How long is DIVER? Okay. 25 to 35 hours, complete main storyline. Playtime easily extends to 50. Okay. Okay. So we're in for the long haul with this one. I'm fine with that. Sorry about that, chat. It's just I clicked a button and then everything kind of went to shit, which is great. I love when that happens. Okay. Aw, cute. I think I'm a little drunk. Okay. Okay, I have to collect, I have to just, okay, I have to save, I have to help the sea people. Oh, I have like a, okay, there's a storage thing here, that's cool. Hold on. Where is my weapon that I made? It says I own one. I'm gonna equip it. Where is it? Oh, here it is. Hold on. How do I do that? Swap. Okay, there we go. Alright. Anything else I need to do? I don't think I can upgrade anything yet, so I'm just gonna... And I'm gonna use the money I have to hire that one guy from the restaurant. Alright, now I should be able to catch a sea loan and stuff. And whatever else. So how do I use the net, though? How do I use the net? I guess maybe just like a thing that pops up when I get near them. This is a fish, right? Yeah, that's a fish. I'm sorry, I have to like fix them. Okay, there we go. Everything's good now. Alright, so now I have the ability to pick things up and whatnot, so that's cool. But let's go help the sea people. I'm tired of your shit. that was good. That felt good. That felt really good to do. That felt really good to do. So like, oh wow. Okay, so shooting one thing fires like a chain reaction. That's really cool. It didn't kill the other stuff though. I noticed. Yeah. Okay, well now that did. Oh, this is so fucking useful. I know that you get more meat if you have like a live fish, but I missed. I missed. Oh, I can't. Okay, I can't. I have to. Okay, cool. All right, let's keep going. Where are I don't know where the seahorses are. I know where I've seen the sea loans. I've seen the, or I don't know how to pronounce it. Is sea loan or Cylone or Cleone? I don't know. I never figured that out. I never figured that part out. So if anybody knows, feel free to tell me, because I sure don't. Oh, wrong thing. Haha, that feels good to do. That feels good to do. Okay, I'll take that. I see, yeah, it says like, it shows you if they're dead on the thing. Fuck. Okay, now that one's dead. I don't even want the guy, I don't even want the meat. I just wanted to get rid of it. Because it's annoying! It's annoying. Ooh. Red sniper rifle. Okay. Well, now that I've obtained that, I'm pretty sure I can unlock that, so I'm gonna keep that there. Oh wait, actually I can disassemble this. Forgot I can do that now. For parts. fuck, wrong way again. I keep making that same mistake. I keep making the same mistake where I just go the wrong way. And I almost get myself killed. That's fun. That's great. Everything is awesome and fun and cool. I really need to figure out how to, like, I mean, I know if I upgrade my weapon I can get more ammo, but I really need more than 8. That would be appreciated. Oh, okay. Nice, now it's showing me where they are. I can disassemble that as well. God, that takes a while to do, though. Alright. Oh, here. So that's how you- okay, so that's how you catch them. Cool. Here's one. Nice. Oh, I need to catch 5 of them? Okay. Sure. Do that. Oh boy, I need to find the UV flashlight again. I think it's right here. I think it's always here. Cool. Alright. Let's head down. Let's head back to where my friends are. My new friends, the sea people. Let's go check in on them and get rid of that steak or whatever. Oh, hold on. Thank you. Ow! God, I am the master just getting hit by every single fucking thing in this game. Great. I'm so good at this game. I'm so good at this game. Alright, I don't need another one of those. I wish you could stack those, but I don't think you can. Okay, I'll pick that up and then I will disassemble it. Because I don't need it. I'm fine with my my shooty shotgun, which is very cool. Oh, okay, cool. Huh? Is that a pile of rocks moving around? Uh-oh. What's this? Oh, my octopus friend again. It's you. What the fuck? Asshole. This guy's a jerk. It's the octopus from last time. Spring ink again. I won't let you get away this time. Just wait. I wonder if this would be like a shortcut. If I do this. Oh, I need to use multiple rocks to do that. Okay. Because having a shortcut down there would be very nice. Because you know me, I am the master of getting lost. Okay, cool. Great, the path is clear. Just wait, you octopus. Hey, how dare you spray ink twice? How dare you spray ink twice? I won't let you get away with this. Ask Bancho for takoyaki. Oh. This guy's gonna squeeze through that rock again. Aww. Oh, but it did. Oh, it unlocked. Oh, a shortcut. I think. Ah, I'm gonna run away again. It's definitely quick. Drop something again. It always leaves something behind. It might not be as bad as I thought. I've been telling you this whole time, Dave. It's a friend. It is a friend, not a foe. Okay? It is a friend octopus, not a foe octopus. You have to be nice to the little octopus, okay? Okay, Dave? Alright, so oh, that's where the steak is. Okay. So this does make like a little shortcut, which is nice. I still have to deal with these, though. And the fucking explosive jelly right there. God damn it. Ah! I'm okay. No, I don't need that. Alright, now I'm back. Oh, you're back, human. I was afraid you'd been eaten by a... I was afraid you'd be eaten by a filled shark on the way back. She talks like someone I know. I think I'll be able to pull out the steak if I use the diving gloves from Dr. Bacon, who lives on land. Wait, I'm sorry. I'm saying his voice in I'm saying his line in her voice. I think I'll be able to pull out the steak if I use the diving gloves from Dr. Bacon, who lives on land. Bacon, hee. In our language, that sounds like spoiled whale meat, hee. Okay. Wait a moment. Let me try and pull. I mean, you're not far off from what it is. Okay. Time for this shit. Bam. Bam. Nice. Dave, get the fuck out of the way, please. Thank you. Nice. That just made it worse. That just made it worse. It was effective, but not enough. I think one more attempt might cut it. Human, there's another rock pile over there. Oh, okay. There's no movable device over there. I'll have to go check it out first. Probably gonna have to get a bomb or something. Like, they're gonna make me go back up, and then I'll have to get a bomb, and then... Bleh. Or maybe my octopus friend will help. No. There's nothing that can be done on this side. I'll have to try going around back. Okay. And, I'm assuming I just go back this way. Back through the octopus hole. Maybe? No? There's gotta be a way I can get over there. Okay, here, this way. I almost ran into those again. That would have been just great. Okay. At least there's no, like, explodey jelly anymore. Take that. Thank you. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Ah! Always that happens. Always. Okay, is this the right way? Am I going the right way, or is this the wrong way? I think this might be the wrong way. I think I've gone, like, a little too far. Okay, I need to figure out how to get over there. God, I wish there was a map. There is no map in this game. To my knowledge, at least I don't think there is. Let me check the keybinds if there's anything like that. Mini-map? Oh, no. Well, I don't have one yet, do I? I don't have one yet. I don't have a mini-map yet. Great, okay. That's clearly not the way. And I need my oxygen, so I'm just gonna... Ow. Okay, so I need to figure out how to get down into there. To there. Is there something I'm missing? Maybe it is like, maybe I do have to go back down there. To where I was, through here. And try to figure out where the side is. Oh, wait. Wait, no, this is, no, this is the other rock pile. So I have to figure out how to get, I think maybe if I just keep going this way, then I'll figure it out. Alright, yeah, I'm... Don't fuck with me, assholes! Eee! Oh, they stopped? Well, they kind of stopped chasing after a little bit. The electricity isn't okay. Okay, I just gotta like fucking go around these guys. They suck. Okay, all right. I hope I'm going the right way. God, I don't know where I'm supposed to be going. And I'm over capacity as well, so. No, I don't know. Where am I supposed to be going? No. Oh gosh. So it's up there. Okay, wait, hold on. Okay, it's up here. It's up like right here. I need to figure out how to get to the other side though. Maybe it is where I was going, because it's like above and then to the... Okay. The hamster is struggling. Maybe it is this way. Okay, wait, I think I'm onto something. Ow! Dick. Oh my god, my poor fucking HP. No, this is just where I came from. Oh, I found it. I found it. I found it. That was close. That was close. Alrighty. I'm glad I found it eventually. That took way too long though. Wow, human? Good, we have a path. You're more useful than you look. The village is very close. Come in through the hole you just made. I'll go ahead. Wait, I can leave now, can't I? Would you listen to yourself? Aren't you worried for Ramo? Besides, I have a request for you. So, I would like you to come to the village with us. The Sea People Village? Me? Yes, there's a reason I came all the way up to the Human Sea. I have a request. Oh, okay. Okay. Yay, we have a new path. I get to meet the Sea People. Yay! I get to go to their village. Yay! Ugh, I'm getting real spooky vibes. Is the squid back? What is... No! What is that? What is that? What is that? Something just moved past me. Human, go on ahead and bear lookout. It's so dark. I feel like there might be something dangerous. Ugh. Okay, I'll go look if you really want me to. What is... There's like a rock thing here. Can I do anything about this? No, okay. How have you guys survived for so long if there's these giant fucking monsters just everywhere? You sense a dangerous creature's presence. Hold on. I need to see if there... I don't have any ammo though. There's probably some ammo like in the thing there. So let's go. Let's go. Time for another boss battle, I assume. That's what I presume. Oh yeah, there's definitely a boss battle. What is this? Why is there debris so deep down here? Oh man, I need to refresh my ammo. Uh-oh. That guy does not look like, that guy does not look fun. Oh no, those vibrations again? Something has to be here. Why did he tell me to come alone? Because he's scared and he's a coward. Duh, he's a little coward baby bitch. Oh, awesome. I don't have any ammo to fight you with. I just have my shitty harpoon gun. Fuck. Okay. What is that? There were wolf eels that big? I don't think I can run. Okay, whatever. How the fuck am I supposed to do that? Oh, there's ammo there. Okay, hold on. I have to get my ammo back. I have to get my ammo back. There's a weapon box here? What's in here? No, I don't want that. Whoa! Fuck, fuck, what? Wait, did he, okay, I could have sworn that guy just took a huge bite out of me, but I guess not. Okay, alright. Whoa, okay. Ow. Ugh, looks really tough. Oh, the shiny spawn on this hill, okay. No, can I get there, please? Yes. Yes. Okay. No, 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 no! I need to refill. I need to refill my ammo. Please tell me it's back. Fuck. No. No, 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 no. Okay, whatever, I'll take this. Oh my god! I keep thinking he takes a bite out of me there! Oh, it's okay. Oh, that's cool. Okay. Whoa, 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 whoa. Ow. I need to wait till his tail. I need to wait for his tail. Hold on. No, god damn it. No, this thing has like the shittiest range. This thing has the shittiest range on the planet Earth. Where's my previous gun? I need my gun back. I need my gun back. I need my gun back. Give me this. Give me this. Okay. What am I doing? What am I doing? What am I doing? What am I doing? Where'd he go? Oh, that's where he went. Okay. Okay. Oh! Wait, was that it? Was that it? Okay. That was remarkably easy, actually. I'll take it. Ugh. How could a wolf eel be so big? I was just about to come and defeat it. I guess I came too late. Haha, you're stronger than I expected, human. Now you see that big gate over there? That's the entrance to the village. Take the lead, human. Okay. Wolf eel tail meat. Oh, wait, hold on, I can take more. Okay, wolf eel gill. Alright. I guess we're going this way? Finally back to the village entrance passageway. Ramo, you have a key, right? Oh, no! I left the key back at the... Just kidding! I left it here in my bag. I thought you would ask me to take you again. Let's insert the key and get back to the village. I thought so too. I hate it when games ask you to do that, like, especially if you just got here. I'm like, why would you make me do this? Ooh. This is very pretty. I like this. Wow, so this is... Haha, that's right. This is the Sea People village we live in. To think there would be a place like this under the sea. Oh fuck. Wait! How did a human get in here? Huh? Ramo and Suam, were you kidnapped by this human? Tenjin awaits you. He's lost sleep worrying about you. It's kind of hard to explain. Ha! Allow me. I rescued Ramo after she was kidnapped by a squid. Forget it. Just take me to my father. It'll be faster for me to explain things to him. Is her father gonna be the mural we saw, I wonder? The big buff merman? I don't know. I don't think so. Aww. The dad guy. So cute. Oh my goodness, Ramo, my daughter. Where were you, my precious girl? Your daddy was worried out of his wits. Are you hurt? Did the humans do something to my daughter? Wait, who is this next to you? I thought you'd brought a blue manatee, but this is... come on, man. This is a human. What is going on here? I'd like an explanation. You know that strange things have been happening around here recently, right? For example, the tremors and the ice melting off the divine tree? The divine I'm sorry? The what? Of course, Ramo. I've been looking into the causes. It's already been 2 years. You know, I did not expect... You know, when I started up Day of the Diver, I did not expect the game to go in this direction. I'm gonna be completely honest. But I'm not complaining. I mean, I'm fine with it. It's already been 2 years. You know our technology has its limits. Well, the ancient texts have all been lost, and we need to figure out new methods again. We can't keep simply waiting, Father. That sounds more right, I think. Humans are selfish, but they have good technology. We need their help. I've noticed that there are some some English sentences in this game that sound a little funky. But you know, that's fine. No, not the humans. They can't be trusted. They dirted our home and even hunted our kind to put on display. They're wicked creatures looking to hunt us and steal from us. We can't ally with the likes of... Oh, come on, what's this now? Another huge tremor! See? Something really bad will happen if we don't do anything. When I was taken by the giant squid in human waters, Dave here helped me out. Swam said he was the one who did that earlier. Try asking him. Not all humans can be bad, can they? I mean, well, even if I wanted this, the villagers would not agree. Help from humans? No one would believe it. If this man can gain the village's trust, I'll consider your suggestion. The village's trust. How does he go about winning that? How about asking around to see what they need? Alright, since today's long trip must have been pretty tiring. Human, come back here tomorrow. You'll have to listen to the villagers' requests. Wait, I didn't even agree yet. How am I supposed to come all the way here? Am I gonna get like a fast travel thing? Chapter 3! A request from the sea people. Since you say you helped my daughter, Remo, I suppose it wouldn't be fitting for my people to ignore your needs, even if you're a human. Use this. Yay, is that like a fast travel thing? Finally! What's this? Looks like an ordinary mirror. The sea people mirror, once installed, will let you instantly travel to this village. Yes! Yes! Wow! Is such a thing possible? Various disasters have caused our decline, but our ancestors were a very advanced civilization once. Right now, all we have left is a few of their relics, sadly. In any case, installing this in your village will allow you to come to this village whenever you need. It'll recognize your face, so only you'll be able to use it. It also operates in the light of the divine tree or the sun, so you can only use it during the day. Oh, yes, a map! I mean, that's not really like a map, but that's a map that works. A teleportation device. That's pretty amazing. I'll have to go back to the boat with this mirror for now. Okay. Great. What's up? What? Okay. What? Rank 99. Okay. What did the octopus give me, I wonder? An octopus weapon charm. A mysterious weapon charm left behind by the octopus. Maybe something cool will happen if it's... Ooh. Hey, cool. I'll equip that. Why are the fish getting it on again? I guess I'll install this sea people mirror on the boat. You said I could go to the sea people village with this during the day, right? I should go tomorrow. Oh, look at the time! Bancho Sushi must have opened already. I should drop by and check if anything of note happened. Oh, no option. Okay, just throw me in there. Momo, little baby Momo. Hello. Hello. Sorry, I saw the cat and I freaked out. I should do a little cleanup. Oh. Looks like, where is everyone? Hello, Yoshi. It's Yoshi. What are you doing here? Oh, my work ended just now and I was passing by. I saw the lights were on despite the hour. Bancho seems to have gone home already. Aw, we miss. Aw. You looked a bit tired recently. I'm worried he might fall ill. Even so, I'm glad to see him working so hard again like this. Oh, come to think of it, I heard he once gave up on cooking because of a certain incident. Yes, back then, I thought he was gone for good. Wonder what it was about. Well, it's nothing that secretive. I simply avoid mentioning it with him present just in case it's still a sore spot for Bancho. I'm thirsty. Can you first give me a glass of beer? Okay. So how do I get it to have 20% for... I don't understand what that means. Like, I stop right here and I still get it. I just get it good. Nothing so refreshing as a glass of beer after work. It's especially nice to have a view of the sea at night, like this as I drink. I'll tell you now a bit about Bancho and why he quit cooking for a while. It was 12 years ago. We get a flashback. We get a flashback. Ooh. What the hell? Okay, this is different. This is the Dugong Hotel. I worked here 12 years ago. It's a 5-star hotel with both tradition and a long history. It looks a bit old, yes, but at the time, the quality of the food and service had been newly improved. Yoshi, do you have— this is like a fucking visual novel all of a sudden. Yoshi, do you have a moment? What is it, manager? Well, a troublesome customer left a reservation. A troublesome customer? You know the actress Louis Crawford? She's made a reservation at our hotel. Louis Crawford. Louis Crawford. She was a leading actress with a long career. Her role as a spy in one of her most famous works, The 42nd Floor, was why is this giving me like Ace Attorney vibes? Is that intentional? Okay. I feel like, I don't know. She appears to have hit a slight, like that sound, the sound that just played sounded eerily close to a sound effect you'd hear in Ace Attorney game. She appears to have hit a slight slump as her new movies haven't been doing very well. No, whatever. The manager had spent his entire life at the hotel. It's like he was a living embodiment of its history. He had a lot of knowledge about the etiquette used by the upper class of each country, and he was very used to servicing those of high rank. Many VIPs sought his services. Our Dugong Hotel is a luxury hotel with many years of history and tradition. In the past, we had nobles staying in our accommodations, and many notable films were shot here. Many people seeking that sort of old era nostalgia used our services, and we had very high standards for the services we provided. I've heard that Louis Crawford can be very picky, but we are a very high quality hotel with history and tradition on our side. I don't think there'll be any issue if she comes. Haha. So there it is. Nobody can beat the level of services and staff at this hotel. We've won many prizes as well. Just one thing. You haven't heard the rumors about her, have you? The rumors? Take a look at this. She's famous not only as a chef, but as a gourmet. That's a blurb she published in a travel magazine recently. It appears to be a description of her travels, but it's just her bashing down the hotel she stayed at. Gloria hotels are the best of the best, and yet she wrote such a scathing review. Bringing out the bad does make a person look more professional. Her writing is mostly like this. What do you suggest we do, Yoshi? Well, I suppose we can't refuse the reservation, if only for the hotel's reputation's sake. In that case, we'll have to think about how to serve her. How we'll serve her. We'll take the reservation, but we'll also need to think of ways to satisfy her. I suppose you're right. Do you have any ideas, Yoshi? Our hotel's strengths are our long history and tradition, as well as our high-quality service. The way we can satisfy her will involve making good use of these things. Did she reserve a suite? Yes, it's a suite. We'll need clean rooms and services that match her tastes. We'll need clean rooms and sorry, I cannot read today I can't read ever for some reason. We'll need clean rooms and services that match her tastes. We'll treat her as a VIP. I'll look into the drinks and amenities she prefers and place them as I also check on the state of the rooms. And about who will receive her, I suppose I'll have to do that. Thank you. There's no one that can handle such a tricky customer except you with your long experience with many VIPs. I'm more tense than usual. And about the meals, we can offer her the buffet for breakfast, but we'll also need to ready— this is so much talking, so much dialogue. The dinners at our hotel, we have fantastic French— is that French? That just looks like a steak and fries to me. We have fantastic French food. We have fantastic French food at our hotel. It's the pride and joy of Dugong Hotel with a Michelin-starred head chef at the helm. But you came at the most inconvenient time. Our head chef is in France on a culinary research trip. The sous chef has taken his place for now, and he cooks wonder. Hello, Billy. Welcome. We're playing some Day of the Diver today. Hello. The sous chef has taken his place for now, and he cooks wonderfully as well. However, our upcoming customer is a very difficult one. Dugong Hotel's Japanese food has never been its strong suit. We only served udon or simple donburi. We've been making exponential progress, however, after we hired Bancho. We've grown quite dramatically. Bancho is famous for his ability to reinterpret the use of ingredients, and his food was recently featured in an overseas magazine. He might be our dark horse. That means Japanese is likely to be our best choice. Bancho hasn't really proven himself yet. Do you think it'll be right? Bancho's skill is indisputable. However, one great drawback is that he doesn't consider the preferences of customers. His sole focus is letting people try new flavors. That's what drives his creativity, of course, but this time it won't really serve us. We're dealing with the infamous Lewis Crawford, after all. I see. That's a good point. However, I think the best we can do right now is try and persuade Bancho. I agree. Best of luck, Yoshi. God, that was a lot of text. Oh, there's more. There's more. There's always more. Oh my god, he's not bald! Oh my god, he's not bald. Bancho, are you here? Miss Yoshi, what are you doing here? Oh, you're here. That's good. I've come to check on the statue. I've come to check on the status of the manager's request. Look all you want. It's just an ordinary Japanese food kitchen. Bancho was a peculiar man. He suddenly appeared one day, handing us a resume and explaining he'd been learning in Japan. All the sushi establishments listed in the resume were top tier, but Bancho never stayed in one place for long. He told me that he moved on each time after learning enough. The manager had a long talk with him and then left the operation of the Japanese food team to him. He could always be found in the kitchen busy with something day in and day out. He researched food on his own when there were no customers. He hated to be interrupted. Were you practicing? Well, yes. Training means thousands and tens of thousands of attempts. Practice without rest is the only way to produce meaningful results. I see. I heard that you never skip research and practice, Bancho. It relieves me to see you so hard at work. What do you mean relieved? Bancho, would you be willing to try servicing a VIP? Ooh. Servicing a VIP? That's right. We have an important guest who will increase our reputation. Or rather, who might send it plummeting I can see how this is gonna go really wrong really fast. Her name is Lewis Crawford. She's an actress that's infamously hard to please and also a gourmet reviewer. It's been about a year since you joined the Dugong Hotel. Our Japanese food team, which was never very strong, received much attention in a short span of time, and we can't deny that your contribution to this was great. However, this means that we also get customers who want special treatment. So you mean to say that I should try and please this picky woman, Lewis Crawford? Yes, this is important. As Dugong Hotels, I am losing my words here. Reputation lies in the balance. What do you say? For me, cooking has always been a battle with myself, not with others. Making perfect food has always been my goal, and that won't change no matter who I cook for. I simply use the best ingredients available in the current season and the most suitable recipe. Will that be okay with you? Alright, we'll leave the individual dishes in your hands, Bancho. However, I would like to offer input on the method of servicing our guests. Alright, you're the expert, Miss Yoshi, when it comes to servicing food. Gosh. Okay, what is a kaiseki chorus? What is that? Kaiseki is a Japanese... Okay, I'm not fucking reading that. What do you think of the kaiseki chorus? It's traditional. Kaiseki is a form of art which utilizes many dishes to express a unified theme. That means using soup, grilled food, steamed food, and deep-fried food to express a theme. Doing all that is impossible in this current question. Okay. Okay, cool. So it'd be a bit different from the traditional method. I think I could add soup and hors d'oeuvre, I think it's hors d'oeuvre, I don't fucking know. Sashimi, side dishes, sushi, tempura, and dessert to the course. What do you think? Not bad. So what do you make for each dish? Do you have to explain this to me? Thank you for cutting to black. Thank you. God. Yes, I think that'll be fine up to the sushi. Tempura is next. I suppose shrimp would be the most logical choice. It's difficult to create any impact with shrimp. We've kept everything pretty normal so far, so this is where we add a little spice. As you guys can probably tell, I probably won't be streaming any visual novels in the future years. Maybe Ace Attorney, but that's like the only one. I've been researching this very topic. How does something like this sound? You must have a good idea. Let's hear it. Shark! No, not the shark again! God damn it, Poncho! I knew it! I knew he was gonna go for shark. I'm thinking of a dish that uses a shark head. What? A shark? Can sharks be eaten? Sharks are a very tasty fish. This is the time of year when they grow fat, boosting the flavor. The meat in the cheeks in particular has a lovely chewy texture which reminds you of both ordinary meat and fish. I don't think I want to eat that. But shark is too exotic of an ingredient. Couldn't we use something a little more widely consumed? Especially considering this is Lewis Crawford. Good food will impress anyone. Anyone who takes a bite will recognize the food for what it is. That it is the best possible food that can be found around here in the current season. I'll give it some thought. I'm not sure if it'll be okay. I can't help but think it's not that great. I mean, I eat much. That's what I'm saying. If you serve that dish and things go sideways, the consequences won't affect you alone. Both the manager and I will also take part of the blame. After all, she's coming to the Dugong Hotel, not to a restaurant operated by you. Hotel must seek to provide the most restful and enjoyable experience to its guests. Nothing can be allowed to mar that experience, as the hotel will stand to lose by it. But there's no guarantee she'll hate it. She'll know from taking just a bite that it's one of the greatest foods. There's always an exception to the rule. She's an extremely picky person, after all. What a pity. I understand. I'll go with shrimp tempura then, though it can't compare to shark. Stop with the shark! We are not eating sharks. Okay? It's not good for the environment. Oh, here she comes. Oh boy. This way, Miss Crawford. Thank you. This is the chef who will be preparing your food today, Boncho. He's younger than I expected. I was hoping for a slightly more experienced chef. Oh my. Tight-lipped, are we? Perhaps my looks leave you at a loss for words? Haha. He seems a little tense. He's quite a skilled chef, I assure you. I'll be looking forward to the food then. If I remember the surface here being quite alright for an old hotel. I like the carpet and the paintings on the walls as well. Furnishings at Gloria Hotel have a kitsch quality to them that I don't like. But to think there's no gym, that's a bit of a shocker. I need to exercise daily to maintain my figure. It was our intention that your stay be as restful as possible. Everyone has their preferred way of resting. Well, the bathing facilities were good, so I'll content myself with that. So what's for— I don't know, I feel like you're a little too snobby, lady. What's for dinner? A Japanese course meal. Here's the course menu. The first dishes are steamed egg. I don't know. This is strained egg steamed with dashi and other ingredients. You'll find lily root, shrimp, inconet, and mushrooms inside. Steamed egg? I was expecting something a bit more special. Well, I suppose there are quite a few ingredients inside. It was also made with love to bring out the best flavor for the guests. We're gonna start something small. You want to start something small when you start out a meal. You don't want something like huge and special, because then you're gonna ruin your appetite that way. You want to gradually go up. Like, isn't that how it's supposed to be? And the next dish is... Oh, okay. A few minutes later. So, the tempura and dessert are left? What's the tempura? Don't tell me it's shrimp. The sort that's commonly served— he's gonna fucking bring out the shark head, I swear to you. The dessert's no doubt the usual fruit. I suppose I tasted basically everything. It's hard to decipher her reaction. Have we succeeded? How do you like it? Are you happy with our Japanese food? That's about as good as I expected it to be, I suppose. I suppose I could come here to eat every now and then, but why bother coming to a hotel to eat food that's quite average? Even so, I'm sure our food is better than that of most other restaurants. The moment I saw the steamed egg... Fuck! I picked the wrong thing! God damn it! I had a feeling the food would be average, and I was right. Oh dear, it seems Japanese food isn't all that to your liking. Ignorant of that fact, we served you Japanese. My mistake. Please accept my apologies. Whatever, it wasn't that good, but it was healthy at least. What the fuck? You just said it was alright! What the fuck? I'm done with her. This hotel doesn't even have a gym, so I suppose the food should be healthy at the very least. May I have a word? Bancho? Allow me to introduce myself again. I am the master chef who works here, Bancho. I'm not much of a speaker, so I've been listening quietly. I find it impossible to maintain my silence now, however. Oh my, do you have something to tell me? Apparently you're supposed to have better food than anywhere else, right? Now, Bancho, Miss Lewis here it is most definitely my fault for failing to provide food that satisfies you. Will you not give me a chance to make up for my mistake? What? Oh, well gosh, I'm a very busy woman. What you witnessed today are my real skills. I'll serve you food that can... No, Bancho, don't do this. She's not gonna eat it. that can objectively be called good. Bancho, you can't be talking about... So you're saying you have something else you think will satisfy me? Alright, I'll wait. But remember, my time is valuable. Your food had better be amazing. Bancho, you can't be thinking of... What is it, Miss Yoshi? Is there something I'm missing? All done. This was whole roast. God damn it! No! She's not gonna touch that. This is whole roasted shark head. Oh my god! This is... You fried the whole head? It's an amazing dish. The meat and the cheeks haven't been cut out. I chose to fry the head whole to preserve the supple texture. You'll never taste something like this anywhere else. It's a high-quality dish made using the best possible ingredients. Get that out of my sight! How can you call this food? What are you saying? Take just a bite. I guarantee you'll be transported to heaven. I am not happy about this. Is this what service is like at the Dugong Hotel? It's all my fault. I'll apologize. Now, Bancho, Yoshi, you apologize well. I'm sorry, Miss Lewis. I should have been more vigilant. Looks are not all there is to food. Why do you refuse to even try it, Miss Lewis? Lewis, wait, hold on. Bancho, now isn't the time to... Lewis Griffin! She does kind of look like her. She does. I find this highly unpleasant. Hold on, should I do the voice? I can't do the Lewis Griffin voice. I can't. Ida, I find this highly unpleasant. I can't do it! I can't. Is this some kind of hidden... I can't do it, okay. Is this some kind of hidden camera prank or punishment? You'll pay for treating me this way. Don't think I'll just let you get away with it. I'm leaving. Cancel my suite. Charge me a cancellation fee if you wish. I don't care. Fuck. After that, Bancho quit his job at the hotel and left, saying he needed to train. It's my belief it wasn't so much the cooking itself as the ingredients and cooking methods that he researched. I see. Still, I admire him a little for not giving up on the belief that he's going on the right path. I suppose it was the stubborn side of him that allowed him to attain his current level of skill. Working with you now, he even started social media. I feel something has changed about him and I like it. I think you're good for him. Please continue to get along. I'll do my best to help Bancho focus on his cooking. Yay! That was a lot of talking and text and dialogue. Alright, I think I've been streaming for about 2 hours, so and I'm getting a little sleepy. Oh, Dave! You weren't around yesterday, so I was a little bit worried. I couldn't get in touch with you via radio either. I was at the Sea People Village yesterday. You what? What happened? Well, you see? So this happened. And then this. And then this. No, I don't like this guy. This guy fucking sucks. I see. I envy you, I do. What a lucky experience. I'm not sure how you can help, but it's clear they have problems to deal with. Why don't you go talk with the residents first? I'd love to go as well, but... As you said, only one person can use the Sea People mirror. What a pity! Haha! What a hi, Cobra. You do not talk very often, do you? What an unexpected turn of events. If you need any animated tools, don't forget to check out the Cobra shop. Yes, I'll have to use the sea people mirror first to visit their village. Bye-bye. Alright. Cool. Okay, I am going to... Oh, hold on. This fucking guy. Oh, that's so cute. Oh, that's so cute. Oh, I love seeing all the posts from everyone. It's so fun. All right, I'm gonna save here. And okay. Yeah, return title. All right, so that was Dave the Diver part. What part are we on? Part 3. Yes. And we're already in chapter 3, so that's very exciting. So I think that I'm gonna end here. I had a blast today. Thank you everybody so much for stopping by. I don't really have anything else to say. So I have some other stuff planned for later today with some friends, with a friend and stuff. So I'm gonna be doing that. Not on stream. Sorry, I don't know. It's like off stream stuff, but I want to not exhaust myself too hard. But anyways, yeah, thank you guys so much for dropping by. I definitely want to stream more. I'm gonna probably stream more Dave the Diver in a few days, or perhaps, I don't want to say tomorrow, because I am going to the beach tomorrow, funnily enough. Hopefully at least. And then on the weekend I also have things that I'm be doing, so I might not be able to stream again until Monday, but we'll see. I will keep you guys posted on my socials. And yeah, alright. Thank you everybody so much for dropping by. And I will see you guys next time. Bye!